in and sort of play second chair to Nicholas, because I have my own questions around the the specifics of who financially benefit from any of these things. Because, for example, Lula connected his whole government to China.
Yeah.
And he was very open about that. This is the sort of thing that the State Department and the CIA and USAID typically run operations to stop. And yet you had this very strange situation where we ran these operations to install it. Just this Chinese influence in Brazil. And when you look at the Biden family relationship with Chinese stakeholders, you look at the Hunter Biden, $10 million basically windfall from Chinese clients for his consulting company and partnerships with Chinese energy companies. You see this recurring pattern with the Biden administration. I don't have, though, since everything I do is open source, I don't have any confessions from people in the U.S.
Okay, so can I
ambassador.
just Chad, can I just unpack what I think you're saying, and then tell me if that's kind of what you're saying? And then Nicholas, I'm going to come to you next. So, are you saying hypothetically to the average person, not somebody that's Mike Ben's caliber? This is your world, deputy. You're in working with the State Department. You're in the world, internet. You're around it. This is your world that you study. To the average person, you're saying China potentially used Biden as a favor to make sure Bolsonaro doesn't get in the way, because under Lula, they're able to buy and get more resources and things that they want there, and Bolsonaro gets in the way. So, hey, U.S., we'll stay quiet and we won't do anything with you. We'll keep doing business with you, but we need a favor from you. We need to make sure you go out there and do whatever you can for Bolsonaro to stop talking about the voting system and rig it if you can. Make sure he doesn't win so we can put Lula in, because Lula's going to play game with us, play ball with us, with China. We can get in and do whatever we want to do. Is that kind of what you're insinuating?
I don't know that. There are things that keep coming up in my research about it that I find highly disturbing, and I would not be able to get without the subpoena power of Congress. And it is my opinion that at the end of this process, and once the report that I'm working on is published, and all of this is, can be just the whole timeline chronology, network map, funding flows, cast of characters, all of that. It's my belief that that it would be beneficial for the American people to understand, to have an autopsy of the rogue activity of their own government, for any of the oversight bodies that we currently have set up, whether that is the weaponization subcommittee of Jim Jordan, whether that's the House Foreign Affairs or Senate Foreign Affairs committees, whether that is declassifying federal secrets, frankly, from covert actions involved in this. There are any number of subpoena power equipped courts, congressional committees that could probe those questions. Most immediately, what comes up most frequently publicly in this, and what they talk about, is this international exchange of ideas between Trumpism and Bolsonaroism. And that's a very simple one to understand, right? Which is just the raw political calculus of, you get rid of Bolsonaro, you get rid of Trump, you get rid of and this is a direct quote, the international exchange of ideas. You can actually go to my foundation's website, foundationforfreedomonline.com. If you put Brazil into the search at the top, you'll see, oh, yeah, one word, yep. And you just put Brazil on the top, and you'll see a report that I published a little over 2 years ago. U.S. tax dollars funding text message censorship in Brazil. Published this in July 2022, so just in time for the CIA director to descend on Brazil. And you'll see we U.S. taxpayers paid to get the censorship state installed in Brazil.
And if you U.S. taxpayers?
Yes, because this is all USAID and NED and the NGOs that are all
in
funded by
Brazil. Private text to family and friends are fast becoming as targeted by counter disinformation techniques as public-facing posts on social media. This escalation of fact-checkers' interventions and sharing limits on text has been introduced through new speech constraints on popular encrypted apps such as WhatsApp, Telegram, and Rob, can you go a little bit higher so I can read the last sentence? These developments are being funded by millions of dollars in U.S. tax. Nicholas, did you feel this, and did you see this happen in Brazil?
Yes, of course. Our superior electoral court, they made a lot of decisions that was bad for Bolsonaro. For example, when Alexandre de Moraes announced that Lula won in the superior court, There was another judge called Benedito da Silva. He just went through him and said, mission mission given, mission accomplished.
Right. You
And
have that clip, by the way,
yeah,
Rob.
and until now, this judge didn't came to public to say what I mean was that he didn't say that. So it was very strange. There is another judge in Brazil called Barroso that after the elections that Bolsonaro lost, he said we defeated Bolsonarism.
This is
Yeah,
the one Rob played.
yeah. This is the video.
Solicito que Suas Excelências, o senhor ministro Ricardo Lewandowski e ministro Benedito Gonçalves, solicito que conduzam ao plenário o excelentíssimo senhor presidente da República Federativa do Brasil eleito, Luiz
Now,
Inácio
now
Lula
he's
da Silva.
announcing Lula as the president, and then this judge
Solicito que Suas Excelências,
say mission given.
o senhor ministro Ricardo Lewandowski
So what
e
he means
ministro
about that-
Benedito Gonçalves, solicito que conduzam ao plenário o excelentíssimo senhor presidente da República Federativa do Brasil eleito, Luiz Inácio
now he's announcing Lula as the president, and then this judge comes to him and say mission given is mission accomplished. that said
So,
that.
what he means about that?
And after that, he's receiving
Mission given, mission accomplished.
So he was working against Bolsonaro. So he's a judge. He should be impartial. So this is one judge. It's the same. You can stop the video right there. This is the same judge that said that. This is Lula, and after that, he's receiving. I don't know how you say this in English, but he's giving some taps in his face as he was his best friend. So this is the kind of judge that's saying that Bolsonaro is a tyranny. He's a person that he's giving misinformation to Brazil.
But at this point, because there's
Google it, for example, you would find there are some others information that you try to find and it was harder to find. So, for example, in the elections, you couldn't say that Lula was had Maduro as a friend. You couldn't say that. You couldn't say that Lula was friend of Daniel Ortega from Nicaragua. So you couldn't say that. You couldn't say that Lula was supporting abortion, for example. I was sued. I was multa. I was fined for like 3,000 reals just because I made a video saying that Lula was supporting abortion, was supporting drugs, and I was fined because of that. So there's another minister of the Supreme Court called Gilmar Mendes that he gave an interview like maybe 6 months ago that he said that Lula is in presidents because of them. Like any other country that gives politics seriously, it would be a scandal. But in Brazil, it's normal because the Supreme Court of Brazil is not more a judiciary power; it's a political power. So in the elections, for example, Bolsonaro in our Independence Day in 7th of September, he had a huge protest, like 2 million people in Brasilia, in São Paulo, and then he couldn't use these images for his network. He couldn't use. It was crazy. He
Just
couldn't.
to show how many people were in
Yeah, he
attendance,
couldn't-
you guys couldn't show.
Yeah, he couldn't show that on TV. And for example, in the Labour's Party, was saying that Bolsonaro was a Hannibal. They were saying that Bolsonaro was a pedophile. They were saying that Bolsonaro would end up the férias, dos trabalhadores, the holidays for the workers. So it was all that kind of disinformation, and anything happened with Lula and his friends. For Bolsonaro, anyone that, for example, questioned the voting system would be fined. My social media was down for 1 month because I just questioned the voting electronic machines. So my lawyer doesn't have access to the process. My social media just went bad because of political pressure, but not a judiciary process. So that what happened in 2022. We all thought that, of course, there was a interference in Brazil, but we didn't know where did it come, how they did that. But now it's clear that, as Mike said, that if it wasn't USAID, maybe Bolsonaro, or sure Bolsonaro would be the president of Brazil.
That's probably the only L I'll take
Mike, let me
tonight
ask
is
you,
that I was
as we're
muted in my
processing
opening
what he
statement.
said.
So,
When I was
just
with
very
the
quickly, you
president,
could have done that
I asked
better
him, so, for
by
example,
sourcing the
what
Iron Maiden
what can
version,
the US do on
which
this
is something
issue?
like
Because we
"Bow
saw
to
that
you
Lula's
of Earth and
popularity
Sea"
when
for
he was done being
For
president after
$9.
the 8 years he was in from 2003 to
Today.
2011.
Talk
he
about
had
a bargain.
popularity of 80%.
Or
81%.
you get
It was very high.
6
And then he goes
replica
and does
gold
his
bars
time,
for
White House is
$26.
full, passes the 12 years. Alexandre de Moraes comes in, takes him out. Bolsonaro wins.
Dude, I might have to get some gold bricks and add it to my my desk. Just put like a pile of gold bricks right
the rest is
there.
history. But I asked him the question. I said, so
Dude, I should.
24%,
Oh,
the
you-
lowest it's ever been in Brazil. It's not a good thing. Brazilians don't like this guy. Coffee is expensive. Everything is expensive right now. They're going through it. What is the opposite of what CIA did to hurt? Meaning, so now, how does Alexandre de Moraes or X, which now I think they banned Trump's network and Rumble, and now Rumble and Trump's network are suing Brazil, and while Lula's there, Alexandre's there, what can U.S. It doesn't look like this guy's afraid of anybody. It doesn't look like this guy, de Moraes, is afraid of anybody in the States. Do you think things can change in any way where Bolsonaro could run and win in 2026?
Yes, if the U.S. is serious about applying diplomatic resources on the issue. There are many ways that can be done. Not sure this is the most appropriate forum for discussing them, but and there are actually two open threads that I did want to get to from what Nicholas just said. But the short answer is there are many things that the U.S. can do if the U.S. ambassador is serious, if the president is serious, if Marco Rubio is serious, and yes, much can be done. I'll leave it there. I think what you need is policy alignment, and then the appropriate organs to mobilize.
Policy alignment where? Amongst Bolsonaro and U.S.?
Well, you're going to need to synchronize all of the different facets of U.S. foreign policy when that can be done.
No, let's stay on that. I'm curious.
Yeah.
What does that mean? I want to know what that means. Because for me, you're dealing with a country that out of their 11 Supreme Courts, only 2 are conservative. You're dealing with a country that out of their 81 Senate, only 22 are conservative. You're dealing with a country that out of 513 congressmen and women, only 130 are conservative. When you look at Bukele, Brandon, you were telling me earlier the fact that Bukele, the way he did it in advance.
Yeah, he kind of set up his Congress before he became president, so he had everybody in his favor, the majority. So he looks like a dictator, but he just happens to have everybody on his side, so he does no resistance, and a real beautiful setup for what he wanted to do with his policies.
And that's a beautiful thing because he can just go in and say, here's what we want to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this case, this is a very different situation that he has. So if U.S. can't go and say, well, what do we do with the Supreme Court? What do we do with Senate? What do we do with that? That's a longer term play. To me, short term between now and 2026, what can U.S. really do?
Just doesn't feel appropriate. I'm just gonna say it. I don't think that this is the forum to. But I'm happy to listen to you guys talk about it. It's just, yeah.
It sounds so interesting.
Yeah, one thing I can say is all Brazilians, Mike, all Brazilians, we are hopefully that this guy pays for what he's doing, because what we think, what we feel day by day is that he's the law and anyone can put him in his place, and he's just dobrando a aposta. He's just doubling down. He doesn't quit never. So I agree with Mike. It's difficult to say what U.S. should do with a judge, a Supreme Federal Court judge, but we all hope that he pays for what he's doing, because he's doing very bad things with people. We didn't talk about the 8th of January yet, but there are a lot of innocents. They are still in jail. There are 17 years of jail. and he doesn't quit. He's just doing this because he hates the right wing, hates the conservatives, and the most, he hates Bolsonaro. They want to put him in jail for a fantasy coup. So we want to see like this guy paying for justice. You know.
Mike, Dan Bongino got a job today.
Is it the McDonald's job from
He
he
got
took
a
over from
McDonald's
Trump
job
at
working
the
with
McDonald's?
cash, right? When are you getting a job? Because it almost seems like you're applying. It almost seems like what you're saying, that my read on what you just did right now is, hey, the right person, you are a right person, you have a way of doing it, you could be the one helping out. Are you, one, either in talks, or two, if you're not, are you open if they were to offer you something?
Well, what I was getting into there was about, and one of the reasons I want to circle back to some of the things that we were just talking about and play some of these things for the world to see here is that we, like I mentioned, congressional committees on this who have subpoena power, who can do transcribed interviews of all the officials involved, who can use the power of the purse to slash budgets, who can do public hearings and put this all out. And prosecutors who in the U.S. who can take appropriate action to the extent that there's criminal wrongdoing. There is right now, agency by agency, the people at the top of the perch have been the people who have been punished by the system. But RFK is at the head of HHS. Cash and now Dan Bongino at the top of FBI. Time and time again, we've seen this. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya at the top of NIH. I think that there is an American interest in pursuing this and the weaponization of the foreign policy establishment and its covert and overt capabilities and its NGO capabilities to go after Bolsonaro as a way of going after Donald Trump. And so I mentioned this phrase, stopping the international exchange of ideas between Trumpism and Bolsonaroism. So on that piece that I pulled up before, the Foundation for Freedom Online Brazil report, you'll actually see that's a direct quote. I think actually just if you scroll down or you just run a Control F for exchange, you'll see this. There you go. So this was funded by the U.S. here. This is if you scroll down, this is a U.S. taxpayer. So what this is, if you click this video, this is a presentation to IFES, which is a U.S. AID partner and implementer. This is International IDEA. This is attached to the National Endowment for Democracy and USAID. And it's basically election management in foreign countries. And you'll see here are U.S. taxpayers paying International IDEA. They get all their money from Congress, through a State Department contribution. So this was back in 2021, 2022. And if you just play this, you'll see what the thought process was ahead of Brazil's election for how our own NGOs were weaponized to go after Trump by going after Bolsonaro. Oh, okay. Do you have an ads there?
There's 2 more seconds left. So, Rob, if you want to.
I think there's 2 ads.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll go through both of them.
Your words of wisdom on how we can build up society's defenses against disinformation, and more specifically, on which measures have proven most effective.
This is International IDEA.
until
This
now.
is our.
Sure, would address. So the question is how society can enhance the ability to detect and resist the fake news and false facts. This is a picture of really recent research we did to
So,
got
pause
data
there.
from
So here he is presenting. This is hosted by us, U.S. taxpayers, and I published this years ago, right? I published this 2.5 years ago at this point. Similar keywords on the Brazilian and U.S. populist right on Parler, and you'll see it's Trump, election fraud, irregularities, the very things that people in Brazil were prosecuted or banned from being able to talk about. They grafted off of the model of something that was done here in the U.S. ahead of the 2020 election when DHS partnered with groups like EIP, the Atlantic Council, Graphica, 2 of our universities, to censor Americans' ability to talk about election voting machines. And then we systematically trained the Brazilian judges to do the same to stop Bolsonaro. And I can walk you through that whole process. But this is just from things I've already published. If you let it play, you'll see how basically this is our taxpayer-funded NGOs and CIA cutouts working with here a Brazilian professor, effectively, on how to co-strategize to stop the international exchange of ideas between Trump and Bolsonaro.
From Paulo, and we got the narratives and discourse that have been used during the end of the year and the beginning of the year, just after the Biden election and before they got in office. And the extreme right used mostly these kind of words to sustain their